Time to get funky with some arid drylands! Washington State's arid drylands can be deceptive. They sometimes look like deserts because they sport some cute cactus, but secretly they are a shrub steppe. So what is the difference? Well, it's pretty simple. A shrub steppe has just enough water to be able to sustain shrubs, while a desert cannot. Shrubs are also dominant here because of specific stresses in the arid environment, such as nutrient-poor soils, fire, and a short growing season. The Columbia Plateau is where the arid drylands in Washington are situated. It consists of canyons, rivers, and gorges. The canyons here are mainly all coulees. Famous coulees are the Grand Coulee, the Pothole Coulee, and the Moses Coulee. Besides coulees, there is also the Juniper Dunes. Speaking of soils, the Columbia Plateau generally has soils with a pH of 7. They're usually loess, loam, sandy loam, clay, silt, or some combination of these. Meet J. Harlan Burtz. He was a geologist who had a theory that the coulees in the Columbia Plateau were created by a massive flood. Everyone thought he was crazy, but he turned out to be right. Part of the evidence was in the shape of the coulees. Rivers make V-shaped valleys and glaciers make U-shaped valleys, but coulees are more square-shaped. In the end, another scientist found evidence that there was a large ice sheet, which they named the Cordilleran ice sheet, that was holding up a lake with as much water as Lake Erie and Lake Ontario combined, and it just broke. It flooded the land, and because basalt has weak bonds, it just eroded in huge chunks, which can be seen and found across the land. That was all so long ago, though. So what is affecting the land now? The rain shadow effect. The Cascade Mountains in Washington blocks most of the maritime moisture from reaching the Columbia Plateau, meaning it blocks most of the precipitation.
Mammals, birds, reptiles, and amphibians all call this place home. Animals and plants in this biome have to be resilient and hardy because of the climate found in this arid drylands. Adapting to their climate, the flora and fauna found here can withstand high heats, cold weather, and low amounts of water. Mammals that can be found here include bobcats, mule deer, coyotes, kangaroo rats, and bats. Many bird species can be found here as well, such as the American kestrel and prairie falcon. A unique toad found here is the Great Basin foot toad, one of the few amphibian species found in this ecosystem. They can lose up to 40% of their body moisture without any ill effects and emit a smell when threatened that smells like peanuts. Plants that can be found here are buckwheat shrubs, sagebrush, alliums, balsamroot, desert parsley, phlox, stonecrop, and bunch grasses. There are many varieties of buckwheat can be found here, such as Eurogonium sphaerophyllum in the family Polymaceae, aka rock buckwheat. The most noticeable pattern in this ecosystem is the correlation between water, vegetation, and animals. Looking at a map, it's clear to see this relationship. Wherever bodies of water form, the most vegetation can be found. These surpluses of water and vegetation are an oasis for wildlife in this dry climate, for food and shelter. With climate change comes increased heat temperatures, longer periods of drought, and more fires. Already, researchers are noticing shrubs dying off. These combined will create a desert without shrubs and other plant life. This will have a negative effect on the wildlife. Populations will decrease with the lack of water and food.
In these arid drylands, the primary producer is the grass and shrubs. The primary consumer is desert rodents, such as yellow-bellied marmots. The secondary consumer is desert reptiles, such as the rattlesnake. The tertiary consumer is coyotes and hawks. Once they die, their bodies produce fuel, carbon dioxide, and soil, which go back into the atmosphere and to the ground to sometimes be used as fuel. The plants continue to process the photosynthesis and produce the oxygen and livestock for consumers. The Spokane tribe of Indians are of the interior Salish group, which has inhabited northeast Washington for many centuries. The spiritual life of the Spokane Indians was closely interwoven with the land and living things. Firstling rites were celebrated for the first caught salmon and the first berries, roots, and fruits harvested during the summer season. Following the construction of the Grand Coulee Dam on the Columbia River in central Washington in 1939, salmon were prevented from migrating, thus disrupting the Spokane fishery. And the waters behind the dam rose nearly 400 feet, which flooded numerous tribal lands and cultural sites. The Spokane tribe seeks to preserve, protect, manage, and enhance the long-term sustainability of natural resources for present and future generations. Arid dryland!